If you're wondering how to pay for your medical bills after an accident, this is the podcast you want to listen to. It's going to have all the information that you need to hear to know how medical bills get paid after a collision. Hi, I'm Michael Coker, a personal injury lawyer in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how medical bills get paid after a collision. I know one of the biggest concerns that my clients typically have is that they're always afraid of who's going to pay my medical bills or how are my medical bills going to be paid if I were to get into an accident. And so I'm going to talk about a few different ways that medical bills get paid and a couple different things that you probably need to know if you have a pending case or you think you might have a pending case, so you're not caught holding the bag for all these expensive medical bills. So medical bills can be paid really three different ways after an accident. The first way is by using your traditional health insurance. So if you're somebody who has health insurance, you can still use your health insurance after an accident. A lot of people come to me and say, no, I don't want this to go on my health insurance. I wasn't at fault. But the reality is you actually might be in a better position if you continue to use your health insurance. And I'll tell you why. Health insurance typically pays pennies on the dollar of what the full cost of the medical bill is. So let's just say hypothetically, you have a $1,000 hospital bill. Well, usually your health insurance will pay maybe $200, $250 for that. And so obviously the amount that's reimbursable is much, much less. Whereas if you tell the health insurance, no, I do not want you to pay this bill, it was from an accident, you might be left having to pay that full $1,000 bill in my example. Now, one of the things that you need to know when you have health insurance is that sometimes federal law, this isn't even state law, but federal law requires you to reimburse your health insurance for what they paid. So if you do use your health insurance, just know that there's an extra obligation that you reimburse them for what they paid out. And think about it. Let's go back to my example. Would you rather pay the hospital a full $1,000 on that bill? Or would you rather reimburse the health insurance the $250 in my example? Obviously the second one, because it's going to put a lot more money in your pocket in the long run. The other thing to know when you're dealing with health insurance is when you're dealing with that reimbursement or that subrogation claim. If you don't reimburse your health insurance properly, especially if it's a certain type of health insurance, so some require to be reimbursed, some do not. But if you have one of the policies that needs to be reimbursed and you do not do that, you can forever lose your right to access that health insurance coverage. And so it's very, very important. And so this is not something you want to mess around with on your own. You want an expert that handles these kind of cases, that understands these different types of health insurance policies, which ones are required to be reimbursed and which ones are not. Because if you mess around and don't reimburse them properly, or if you hire a lawyer that doesn't understand what they're doing and doesn't do it properly, you and your family could jeopardize and risk losing that coverage. And so always, always talk to a lawyer that does these kind of cases for a living, that understands these specific type of cases. Because if you just hire somebody who's a general practitioner or somebody who maybe is not paying attention to your case and just lets a paralegal handle it, they might miss something very important that needs to be paid back. And so that's the first way that you can get your bills paid after an accident, is with health insurance. But let's say you don't have health insurance, or let's say that that's something that maybe don't want to use for whatever reason. You might also have on your car insurance policy something called MedPay coverage or medical payments coverage. MedPay coverage is this certain type of coverage that you can use where it's your car insurance will basically pay a certain amount of your medical bills related to the accident. So some people have $1,000 in MedPay coverage, some have $2,000, some have $10,000. It just depends. And so you might have MedPay coverage, and basically they will cover those bills up to the certain amount. And then once that's exhausted, then either you'd be responsible or your health insurance would be required to pay. So definitely check your policy to see if you have that medical payments coverage, because that can be a great way to get some of those bills paid quickly and easily. So you don't have to come out of pocket for expensive deductibles or copays. Now, if you're not watching this or you're not from Georgia, Other states have what's called PIP coverage, or personal injury protection coverage. That's a little bit different, and that's a different video. So I would encourage you to do your own research about how your specific state deals with that situation. But in Georgia, we are a state that does not do no fault or PIP coverage. We have medical payments coverage. So this video, or this section of the video, is only applicable to those people living in the state of Georgia. So we've talked about you can use your health insurance, you can use your medical payments coverage. The third way you can pay your bills is basically through what's called a lien agreement, or a letter of protection. And this is basically a promise to your doctors where you're saying, hey, I promise to pay you back for these medical bills at the end of the case once we get a settlement. And for many medical providers, they will not do this kind of arrangement until they know you have a lawyer, because they know the lawyer's not going to stiff them. They're going to actually pay the bill and take care of the debts as required. And so for most providers, this would require you to go out, hire an experienced lawyer who understands these type of cases, who can basically promise to these medical providers, hey, we promise that we're going to take care of you and that we're going to pay you back from the settlement. Now, there's pluses and minuses of this, right? There's various aspects that make lien arrangements good. For example, you don't have to pay co-pays or deductibles that you would normally have to pay with health insurance. But the bad is typically you end up having to pay a little bit more out of your pocket, because think about it, the doctor's delaying payment, sometimes years down the road. And so the expectation with some of these providers is that they're going to want a little bit more money for the time that they had to wait to receive the payment. And so there's other factors in Georgia, too, that you need to know about. So SB 68 was a new law that was passed this year, 2025, which dealt with the collateral source rule. So in the olden days in the state of Georgia, the jury would not know that you had health insurance or that somebody else had paid your bills. But some of that's changed. And so now insurance companies, if you have health insurance, for example, and you choose not to use it, they might have the right to show what insurance would have paid in your case. So they might be able to step in and say, well, Mr. Smith is not entitled to $1,000 for that hospital bill, going back to our example. He would only be entitled to the $250 that his health insurance would have paid. And they can submit that to prove that that's the reasonable value of the service. Now, the jury still gets to make the ultimate decision, but at the end of the day, that's going to be evidence that they're going to argue to say that's really all the jury should give you, because that's what the health insurance would have paid. And so there's definite factors and things that are at play in these kind of cases that you need to remember and you need to know. And it's very, very complicated. And so I do not recommend ever handling a case on your own, especially if you have high medical bills. Always get an attorney involved, because the reality is again, you do not want to be the one left stuck dealing with the ramifications of an unpaid bill. And so these are all aspects of medical bills that are important after an accident. So you might ask, well, okay, so now I understand how medical bills get paid. We know that there's either, you can use health insurance, you can use a lien agreement, you can use MedPay. Of course, you can always pay them out of pocket, too. Some people want to go ahead and just pay their medical bills out of pocket so they don't go to collections. And I have people ask me all the time, is there anything that I can do to prevent my medical bills from going to collections while I'm waiting for a settlement or I'm waiting for my case to resolve? And what I always tell them is the hard thing is there's really nothing we can do to stop the medical provider from putting a bill in collections. That's typically up to the provider. But one thing you can do is you can set up a payment plan with them. And sometimes you can make payments that are as little as, $10 a month. Just if you continue making those payments until the case gets settled, at that point, the bill can be paid off in full. So that's a good little trick too that you may not know, is that one of the best ways to avoid your medical bills going to collections is set up a payment plan with that medical provider for a small amount every single month, until that lump sum settlement comes in and you can pay everybody off all at once. And so that's just a few tricks to dealing with medical bills after an accident. But as I stated, medical bills after an accident are very complicated. The law in Georgia is always changing. In fact, it just recently changed. And so don't navigate this on your own. Don't try to do this. I know you're going to think that I'm biased, and obviously he's an attorney. He wants us to hire an attorney. But the reality is I can't tell you how many times I've had clients that have called me that have tried to handle the case on their own, tried to deal with their own medical bills, and then ultimately they do something wrong, like not paying back their health insurance, and it's a big mess. And when it becomes a big mess, there's a lot of lawyers, including myself in many cases, that will say, this case is just too much of a mess now for me to get involved. And so get an attorney involved early. It's a free consultation. So if you don't feel comfortable or you don't like maybe what was said or you disagree with something the attorney said, you don't have to go forward, but at least get a free consultation, at least talk to somebody so that you can know that what you're doing with your bills is correct, that your insurance coverage is preserved and everything is protected. And so if I can ever help you, or if you have any questions for me, obviously I'm more than happy to speak to you. Again, my firm does free consultations. And so just give us a call and we can talk about it and we can figure out whether or not it makes sense for you to hire an attorney based on your medical bills or medical treatment that you might be needing. So if we can help you, feel free to give us a call. But again, if you like learning more about Georgia law and different aspects of it, please, like and subscribe to this. Obviously, we don't get paid to do this. We just do this because we like getting out important information. I've been practicing law for almost 15 years now, or over 15 years, and it's important for me to get this information out to people so that they understand what's going on in the state of the law here in Georgia. So if you like getting these updates, like and subscribe. But until next time, thanks for watching.